I returned from Singapore after 10 years away, eager to surprise my daughter Imani and finally meet my 4-year-old granddaughter, Danika, in the cozy Atlanta home I'd purchased for them. But as I softly turned my key in the front door, I heard my son-in-law's voice slicing through the quiet. "Clean that mess up quicker or you'll earn another whipping tonight." I stopped cold. Through the doorway I saw Imani on her hands and knees, gathering broken plates with shaking hands, dressed in a soiled apron that read, "Clinton Family Property." They had the nerve to treat my daughter this way. I would ensure they regretted it. My name is Felicia Ward, and what you're about to hear is the journey of how I fought with every fiber of my being to protect my daughter. Before we dive into this gripping story of loyalty, betrayal, and justice, drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm curious whether you're starting your day or winding down for the night. A decade working in Singapore's tech industry had made every sleepless sunrise worth it. I'd helped build data hubs under that relentless tropical heat, saved every dollar, all for one purpose, coming home to surprise Imani and finally meet Danika face to face. As my taxi rolled down the streets of Atlanta, everything looked just as it did in my memories. Then we stopped in front of the house on Peachtree Lane, the same welcoming brick walls, the same iron gate, the same magnolia tree where Imani used to spend her afternoons. I had bought this home for her before heading abroad, a promise that she would always have safety and stability. Standing on the sidewalk, I felt my hands tremble as I pulled out my old house key. Imani had no idea I was coming. I expected this to be a joyful shock. The front door opened easily, without a creak. I stepped inside, smiling, ready to shout, "Surprise!" But the word died in my throat when I heard a man's voice coming from the living room. "Hurry up and clean that mess, or you'll be getting another beating tonight." My blood ran cold. Through the corridor, I spotted Imani on her hands and knees, wiping bile from the oak floors. She sported a filthy apron with words that twisted my gut. "Clinton Family Property." My daughter marked as their possession. Abruptly, Xavier's expression flipped entirely. His face shifted from vicious fury to a beaming grin as he strode toward me with open arms. "Mom, welcome back," he declared with phony affection. "What a delightful surprise." Imani was just assisting with some chores. You know her, always eager to contribute. Imani rose hastily, unknotting the humiliating apron and stuffing it behind a sofa pillow. Her actions were panicked, urgent. "Mom," she said, mustering a smile that failed to touch her eyes. "I'm okay, just worn out." A tiny form peeked from behind Imani's legs, Danika, seeing me in the flesh for the first time. Her wide hazel eyes examined me with wonder and apprehension. "Mommy," Danika murmured. "Who is that lady?" The phrase struck like a blow. Despite our video chats, I remained an outsider to her. I knelt to her height, my voice soft amid the inner storm. "Hey, little one. I'm your grandma, Felicia. Remember me from our video talks? I've been working far off, but now I'm here to see you and Mommy." Danika pressed her face into Imani's leg, daunted. Imani laid a guarding hand on her daughter's head, and that's when I noticed it, a deep violet bruise encircling Imani's forearm. "Imani," I began, but she swiftly tugged her sleeves down, giving me a glance that pleaded, "Not now." Xavier slapped my shoulder with rehearsed ease, caution in his gaze. "She's been a bit awkward lately," he said with an empty chuckle. "You know how ladies can be, always knocking into stuff." Something was deeply amiss. The bold daughter I'd departed had turned into a timid creature, perpetually darting looks at her husband for permission. My granddaughter, who ought to have dashed into my embrace, shrank behind her mother as if I posed a danger. In what should have been a blissful gathering, one realization solidified with utter certainty: I had to uncover what had befallen my family, and I harbored a grim suspicion the reality would be much graver than I could fathom. 3 hours later, I seized my opportunity. Xavier departed for a work session, though the bourbon scent implied differently. Danika was dozing, and the home felt altered without his stifling aura. Imani sat at the kitchen counter, gazing at her palms. In the midday glow, the bruises stood out starkly, not merely on her arms, but clutch impressions around her wrists. "Imani," I said tenderly, drawing up a stool, "tell me about those marks. Don't claim clumsiness. I raised you. You were the most agile child in the neighborhood." She recoiled, folding her arms protectively. "It's nothing, Mom. Just job mishaps. I've been handling manual work, aiding with updates." Her tone faltered, evading my stare. This wasn't my assertive daughter who once argued current events over weekend brunch. I grasped her hand softly. "Imani Rose Ward," I said, invoking her full name like in her youth. "Remember what I vowed the day you entered the world? I'd always safeguard you. That vow doesn't lapse." The barrier shattered. Her features crumpled, tears flowing. Her frame trembled as she reverted to the scared child she'd become. "Oh, Mama," she wept, using the childhood term. "I ruined everything so badly. After Danika arrived, I felt ill. Really ill up here." She tapped her forehead. The specialist termed it postpartum depression. Some days, I couldn't rise from bed. Couldn't tend to Danika. Xavier's kin said they'd manage everything while I healed. She dabbed her nose, voice lowering to a hush. "I was on strong meds, Mom. Everything blurred. I couldn't reason clearly. They kept presenting forms to sign, health papers, they claimed. Insurance approvals. I endorsed whatever they placed before me because I believed them. My spirit ached witnessing her revisit this horror. What sort of forms? Asset shift papers, authority grants. They insisted it was short-term, just till I improved. When the haze lifted and I grasped what I'd authorized, she surveyed the kitchen that should have been hers. They informed me I'd transferred the house, that I was now their resident caretaker, repaying the cost of their aid. Fury surged within me like never before. These folks had preyed on my daughter in her weakest state. They warned if I didn't comply, if I attempted to depart, they'd demonstrate I was unsuitable and seize Danika. Her voice fractured utterly. So I remained. "I've been their maid in my own residence for 3 years, Mom." She approached a kitchen cabinet, extracting a bulky envelope. "I saved it all. Health logs, the documents I signed, everything. I kept wishing someday someone would assist me comprehend what truly occurred." As I unsealed that envelope, one notion resounded. They had committed the gravest error of their existence by tampering with Felicia Ward's daughter. That evening, I arrayed Imani's health documents across the kitchen surface like an investigator on a mission. What I unearthed chilled my blood. The timelines narrated a tale of methodical manipulation that exceeded my worst fears. Imani had endorsed the asset transfer papers on March 15th. Per her health dossier, March 15th was also when her therapist had escalated her antidepressant to the peak dose owing to a profound mental crisis. The following dawn, I drove directly to Atlanta General Hospital, where Imani had undergone care. Dr. Serena Morrison, her prior therapist, consented to confer after I detailed the plight. "Ms. Ward," Dr. Morrison said, retrieving Imani's voluminous file from her storage, "I recall your daughter vividly. Her situation was among the gravest postpartum depression cases I've managed." She leafed through sheets of annotations, her demeanor growing more disturbed. "In March of that year, Imani was scarcely operational. We had her on lorazepam and other potent drugs that gravely hinder mental acuity and judgment." "What does that imply practically?" I inquired, though I already dreaded the response. "It means she was unfit to render any lawful choices at all. The drug doses we administered would have rendered her bewildered, disoriented, and extremely malleable. She shouldn't have been autographing greeting cards, much less asset papers." Dr. Morrison summoned Tiara Walsh, the nurse who'd collaborated most intimately with Imani during her therapy. Tiara's expression shadowed upon learning what had transpired. "Oh, my lord," Tiara said, shaking her head. "I remember those times distinctly. Imani was so dosed up that some days she couldn't identify her own aunt when she visited. She'd gaze at folks like peering through mist. I particularly recall one afternoon when she attempted to sign her name on a recovery card from her community group," Tiara proceeded. "Her script was so unsteady and unreadable that we had to steady her hand. No chance she could fathom intricate legal texts. Dr. Morrison extracted Imani's drug record, indicating the dates with her stylus. Examine this schedule, Ms. Ward. March 10th to March 20th. March 20th marked her nadir. We contemplated admission because she was hardly reactive to spoken directives, and they had her endorse legal documents then?" I asked, my tone taut with indignation. "If what you're conveying is accurate, then what they executed wasn't merely ethically abhorrent. It was legally void," Dr. Morrison affirmed resolutely. "An individual under this degree of psychiatric dosing cannot provide informed agreement for anything, particularly something as momentous as asset transfer." Tiara nodded vigorously. "I'd affirm that in tribunal. Imani couldn't have known what month it was, let alone the ramifications of relinquishing her home." Dr. Morrison provided me a printed overview of Imani's treatment in that span. "Ms. Ward, those endorsements are legally null. No judiciary nationwide would validate agreements signed by someone in Imani's state. What the Clinton family perpetrated amounts to abuse of a vulnerable person and exploitation." As I departed the hospital clutching that health synopsis, I sensed something absent for years: optimism. For the initial occasion since stepping through that entryway, I recognized we possessed a genuine opportunity to retaliate. The Clinton family believed they were astute, victimizing an ailing woman, but they'd just supplied me the arsenal to dismantle them. Bolstered by Dr. Morson's health synopsis, I realized I required expert aid. A swift online query directed me to the law firm of Webb and Partners, experts in abuse and exploitation matters. Crystal Webb was renowned for dismantling influential clans who targeted defenseless individuals. Her central Atlanta office resided on the 15th level of a sleek skyscraper, offering sweeping vistas of the Appalachian foothills. Crystal herself was a lady in her early 50s with salt and pepper twists in a neat coil and eyes that overlooked naught. "Ms. Ward," she said, motioning to a plush seat opposite her ebony desk, "describe your daughter's predicament. Omit no particulars, regardless of how minor they appear." I recounted all: the demeaning apron, Imani's postpartum depression, the dubious timing of the document endorsements, and Dr. Morrison's medical evaluation. Crystal jotted on a golden notepad, sporadically posing incisive queries about timelines and observers. When I concluded, she reclined in her seat, drumming her pen on her lips. "Ms. Ward, this is classic exploitation of a susceptible adult. What the Clinton family executed isn't just ethically vile, it's a national offense." She dispersed Imani's health records over her desk, correlating them with duplicates of the asset transfer papers I'd supplied. "Observe this chronology. Your daughter relinquished a $400,000 residence while so medicated she couldn't identify her own kin. Any novice legal scholar could annul these pacts, but here's what elevates this case." Crystal persisted, her tone acquiring a predatory sharpness. The Clinton family didn't merely perpetrate deceit. They established a regimen of persistent mistreatment, compelling Imani to don that apron, rendering her an uncompensated drudge, menacing to remove her child. That's human trafficking, Ms. Ward. My pulse raced as the complete magnitude of what had afflicted Imani clarified. "What can we undertake?" "We're not simply reclaiming your daughter's home, Gakuyo," Crystal stated decisively. "We're dispatching the Clinton family to National Penitentiary, but we must be tactical." She retrieved a new notepad and commenced delineating our strategy. Phase 1, we grant them 48 hours to willingly restore the asset and compensate damages. Some clans panic and resolve upon realizing they're exposed. Phase 2, if they decline, we lodge both civil and penal grievances concurrently: civil action to retrieve the home and reparations, penal submission to the FBI for human trafficking and exploitation accusations. Phase 3, we reach out to the Atlanta Journal. Communal scrutiny can be immensely potent, particularly against clans who value their societal rank. "And Phase 4? I queried. Crystal grinned, and it wasn't amiable. "Phase 4 is when we obliterate them utterly. Asset seizure, incarceration terms, and civil verdicts that will impoverish them for eras." She rose and proffered her hand. "Ms. Ward, I've practiced jurisprudence for 25 years, and I've never encountered a case with sturdier proof. The Clinton family chose the incorrect prey when they aimed at your daughter." "What do we initiate first?" I asked, clasping her hand. "Tomorrow morn, you and I will visit them. We'll offer them an opportunity to yield amicably. If they're wise, they'll accept." Her eyes sparkled with expectancy. "If not, we'll instruct them what transpires when you tamper with Felicia Ward's kin." Exiting that office, I felt more empowered than in ages. The Clinton family was poised to learn that their paramount blunder wasn't solely exploiting my daughter. It was committing it while her mother lived to counterattack. The subsequent morning, Crystal and I navigated the portals of the Clinton Manor in Buckhead. The villa towered ahead, 3 levels of Georgia granite with soaring pillars, flaunting riches erected on manipulation. A servant guided us through polished corridors adorned with portraits of Clinton forebears. Gerald Clinton awaited in his walnut study, positioned behind an immense desk. He was in his 70s with white hair and the pampered traits of bequeathed entitlement. "Ms. Ward," he said without standing, tone oozing disdain, "I comprehend you harbor worries about your daughter's residence setup. Imani is quite content laboring for our kin." "Laboring?" I retorted, anger restrained yet evident. "You mean serving as your unremunerated bondsman in her own abode?" Jarrell chuckled icily. "You're insignificant, Ward. My kin has dominated this metropolis for 4 generations. We possess magistrates, officials, and law enforcement chiefs in our grasp. You think one aging woman can menace us?" Crystal advanced, depositing a substantial dossier on his desk. "Mr. Clinton, I'm Counsel Crystal Webb. These are your daughter-in-law's health dossiers from Atlanta General, plus specialist testimony from her therapist." She unfurled the dossier methodically. On March 15th, June 15th, Imani endorsed asset papers while on maximal psychiatric dosing. Dr. Serena Morrison asserts Imani was so medicated she couldn't recognize her own aunt. Jarrell scarcely eyed the papers. Imani endorsed freely. We have attesters. You capitalized on my daughter's psychological ailment, I leaned in. That's a national felony, Clinton. Human trafficking, exploitation of a vulnerable adult, fraud. Doubt flickered in Jarrell's gaze. He lifted the health records, his assurance fracturing as he perused Dr. Morrison's appraisal. This is absurd, he blustered, voice deficient in assurance. Imani required assistance. We furnished it. She's appreciative. Crystal smiled like a predator. Appreciative? Is that why she wears an apron declaring Clinton family property? Why your son vows to thrash her? Jarrell's face crimsoned. How dare you invade my domicile with these claims? I'll have you detained for harassment. Summon the authorities, Crystal replied serenely. I'd relish elucidating how your kin detained a mentally unwell woman as an unremunerated servant for 3 years. Xavier stormed in, visage contorted with wrath. Dad, why engage these folks? Let me manage this as we manage all our issues. Crystal remained unmoved by the menace. Mr. Clinton, you have 48 hours to restore Imani's home and remit $1 million in reparations. If you reject, we submit civil and penal complaints to the FBI. Jarrell rose gradually, hands quaking with ire. You've just proclaimed war on the erroneous kin, Ward. We'll annihilate you and that wretched daughter of yours. You already endeavored, I said, rising to confront him. But you committed one vital misstep. You left me breathing to retaliate. Departing, Crystal gripped my arm. Flawless. They just issued threats before witnesses. Now we have intimidation counts, too. The Clinton family had 48 hours to capitulate. Instinct suggested they were too haughty to accept. 47 hours later, the Clinton family's quietude provided Crystal all the confirmation required. The Atlanta Journal's headline blared, Affluent kin exploits daughter's mental ailment to pilfer residence. The piece, penned by investigative reporter Lamar Santos, exposed every incriminating facet, Imani's health records, the suspect timing of the asset shift, and the degrading ordeal she'd withstood for 3 years. The paired image depicted our humble abode on Peachtree Lane beside the Clinton Villa, a pictorial emblem of underdog versus titan. Within hours, the narrative detonated on social platforms. Justice for Imani trended on X, with multitudes recounting their own tales of abuse and exploitation. Local broadcasters adopted the story, stationing outside both our home and the Clinton Manor. My neighbor, Mrs. Martinez, rapped on our door that afternoon bearing a stew and misty eyes. Felicia, I had no inkling what Imani endured. The entire block is discussing it. Everyone desires to assist. The influx of backing was staggering. A crowdfunding site emerged overnight, amassing funds for Imani's legal costs. The Atlanta Women's Refuge proffered therapy services. Even passers-by halted me on the avenue to voice their indignation at the Clinton family's deeds. But the true triumph arrived at Ducoup Found that afternoon when Crystal phoned with tidings that lifted my spirit. Felicia, head to the courthouse forthwith, she said, scarcely restraining her thrill. Judge Evelyn Barnes just approved our urgent mandate. Imani regains her home today. At the Atlanta County Courthouse, Judge Barnes's voice resonated with command as she addressed the crowded chamber. Based on the medical proof submitted, it's evident that Ms. Imani Ward Clinton was incompetent to endorse these documents. The asset transfer is hereby proclaimed invalid forthwith. The Clinton family's costly attorneys appeared dazed. Gerald Clinton's face turned scarlet with fury, while Xavier required physical restraint by court guards when he commenced bellowing threats. Moreover, Judge Barnes proceeded, I'm issuing a provisional restraining directive. The Clinton family is barred from contacting or nearing Ms. Ward or her kin. Breach of this directive will lead to instant apprehension. 2 hours later, I observed from our front veranda as Atlanta officers accompanied Imani and Danika home. Imani bore a lone valise, everything the Clinton family had permitted her to retain from her former existence. Danika gripped a tattered stuffed rabbit, her eyes broad with bewilderment about why officers were aiding them. Mommy, Danika whispered to Imani as they ascended the front steps, are we truly going to reside here now? Yes, darling, Imani said, her voice cracking with feeling. We're home. We're finally home. That night, as we gathered around the kitchen counter savoring Mrs. Martinez's stew, my phone buzzed. The display indicated Xavier's number. Answer it, Crystal counseled, raising her own device to capture. Let's discern how foolish he truly is. I activated speaker. Xavier's voice slurred with liquor and wrath. This conflict ain't concluded, old lady. You reckon you've triumphed? We'll demolish you all. You ain't got a clue what we're capable of. Are you menacing my kin? I asked composedly. I'm vowing it, Xavier growled. Savor your minor win while it endures. Soon you'll rue ever returning from Singapore. The connection severed. Crystal grinned darkly as she halted her capture. Bravo, Felicia. He just delivered another felony count. That night, as Imani settled Danika into her own chamber for the first time in 3 years, I experienced something absent since entering that doorway a week prior: optimism. But Xavier's menaces lingered in my thoughts. This skirmish was victorious, but the campaign was distant from finished. The initial week back in our abode felt like entering a vision I'd harbored for a decade. Each dawn, I awoke to Danika's giggles resounding through the passages, a melody missing from these walls for too long. Imani navigated the spaces like rediscovering a lost dialect, lingering in thresholds, tracing fingers along known textures as recollections of brighter days surged. "Mom," she said one morning, discovering me brewing pancakes. "I forgot how delightful coffee tastes when you're not dreading someone's outburst." Danika gradually thawed toward me, her reticence dissolving as she grasped I wasn't departing. The turning point arrived Tuesday afternoon when I found her wrestling with a tricycle, evidently too diminutive for her. "Need a hand there, darling?" I asked, squatting beside her. She gazed up with Imani's eyes, brimming with resolve and vexation. "I want to ride like the older kids, but my bike's too kiddie." That afternoon, we acquired a vibrant purple bicycle with stabilizers and ribbons. Observing Danika's face illuminate as she cycled around our driveway justified every restless night in Singapore. I immersed myself in repairing the overlooked home: creaky planks, dripping taps, flaking paint, minor tasks that occupied me while overseeing my kin. Imani astonished me by participating. Together, we refreshed Danika's chamber in lavender, installed fresh drapes, and sowed blooms in the front yard. "Remember when you showed me how to wield a hammer?" Imani asked one dusk as we built Danika's bookcase. I was 12 and Auntie thought I'd smash the plaster. "You did smash the plaster," I chortled. 3 dents? Your auntie had me on the sofa for a week. Evenings were the highlight, genuine family suppers with dialogue and mirth rather than strained hush. Danika would prattle about her day, displaying sketches or requesting I recite her beloved tale about a courageous little squirrel. "Grandma," she said one night, the term flowing effortlessly for the first time, "will you read me the squirrel story again?" My heart swelled near to bursting. "Of course, darling, as often as you wish." Imani met my gaze and beamed, a authentic beam, not the contrived one from my arrival. "Mom," she murmured later while washing plates, "I forgot what joy felt like. Thank you for restoring it." For 10 days, we dwelled in this cocoon of serenity. Danika addressed me as Grandma routinely. Imani's bruises diminished, and the tormented gleam in her eyes started vanishing. We were evolving into a true kin once more. But Thursday evening, as I settled Danika into bed, my phone rang. The ID displayed an unknown local digit. "Don't pick up," Imani said, materializing in the entry with concern carved on her face. But I did. Xavier's voice was frigid and lucid this time, more alarming than his inebriated fury. "Savoring your cozy kin reunion, old lady," Vivier said. "Don't settle in too snug. Some tempests you can't spot till they're upon you." The line died, leaving me fixated on the device while Danika inquired, "Grandma, who was that? You look frightened." I compelled a smile and pecked her brow. "Nobody significant, darling, just a misdial." But as I extinguished her chamber light, I couldn't dispel the sensation that our tranquil days were limited. 2 nights hence, a fierce thunderstorm swept Atlanta, shuddering our panes and hurling torrents against the abode. I lay abed, heeding the gale's wail, when I detected something amiss: footfalls on our front veranda, measured and intentional. I crept from bed and peered through the drapes. Lightning revealed a silhouette circling our home's boundary, toting what resembled a fuel container. The pungent odor of petrol started infiltrating the barriers. Xavier had arrived to fulfill his pledge. I snatched my phone and keyed 911 as I dashed the corridor. "There's a man with petrol attempting to incinerate my house on Peachtree Lane," I whispered pressingly to the operator. "Ma'am, we're sending teams right away. Evacuate your kin from the abode now." But ere I could attain Imani's chamber, I heard the surge of blazes kindling outside. Amber glow danced through the family room windows as fire encircled our home's base. Xavier's voice ascended over the gale, howling like a deranged soul. You ruined my kin, he screeched. Now I'll ruin yours. Torch it all. Torch it. I erupted into Imani's bedroom, rousing her. Imani, we must flee now. The house is ablaze. She sprang erect, instantly vigilant. Danika! We hastened to Danika's room jointly. She was already roused, perched in bed and sobbing as fumes began seeping beneath her door. The passage filled with dense ebony smoke that scorched our throats and stung our eyes. Mommy, I'm terrified, Danika wailed as Imani lifted her. I know, baby. Grandma's going to get us out of here. The front entry was obstructed by flames, so I directed them to the rear. But as we hit the kitchen, Xavier materialized at the patio door, his countenance warped with ire and lit by the inferno he'd ignited. He clutched a pry bar. Nobody escapes, he bellowed, shattering the pane. If I can't possess my kin, nobody does. I shoved Imani and Danika behind me, seizing a kitchen blade from the surface. Imani, Danika, exit via the side pane in the dining area. Go. I'm not abandoning you, Imani cried. Go, I thundered. Shield Danika. Xavier brandished the pry bar at my head, but wrath had rendered him inept. I evaded and charged him at the midriff, propelling us both into the kitchen units. The blade clattered across the tiles as we wrestled. You want to harm my kin? I panted, battling for advantage as smoke engulfed the space. You'll have to pass me first. Xavier was younger and robust, but I possessed 40 years of pent-up rage propelling me. Every weary dawn in Singapore, every sob Imani had shed, every instant of Danika's youth I'd forfeited, it all channeled into my strikes as we clashed. The wail of alarms pierced the tempest just as I succeeded in pinning Xavier to the floor. Through the fractured patio door, I beheld flashing crimson and azure lights as fire engines and patrol vehicles inundated our lane. Atlanta police! Everyone out of the abode! I hauled the half-aware Xavier toward the rear entry as firefighters surged through the front, their lines already dousing the blazes devouring our home. Outside in the deluge, I located Imani and Danika clustered on the neighbor's grass, both secure but quivering with dread. Danika sprinted to me the instant she spied me emerge from the haze. Grandma, I thought you were lost. I knelt and drew both into my embrace as medics examined us for fume intake, and officers cuffed Xavier. Our home was impaired but enduring, the fire brigade having arrived precisely to avert complete ruin. It's over, I whispered into Imani's locks as we observed them load Xavier into a cruiser. He can never injure you again. 6 months later, I sat in Atlanta County Courthouse, witnessing Judge Evelyn Barnes pronounce the concluding segment of our narrative. The chamber brimmed with allies who'd tracked our case from the outset. Xavier sat at the accused's table in an orange garb, his conceit supplanted by the vacant glare of a shattered individual. Mr. Xavier Clinton, Judge Barnes declared with unyielding authority, you've been adjudged culpable of arson, attempted homicide, domestic assault, and conspiracy to perpetrate fraud. I sentence you to 15 years in federal prison sans parole. The mallet descended with gratifying conclusiveness. Xavier didn't wince as guards escorted him away in irons. 2 weeks prior, Gerald Clinton had been condemned to 8 years for exploitation of a vulnerable adult, fraud, and conspiracy. The Clinton Dominion had collapsed instantaneously, holdings immobilized, estates confiscated, their name equated with disgrace. Crystal clasped my hand. It's over, Felicia. They can never wound anyone again. The tribunal-mandated restitution was considerable. The Clinton family disbursed $2 million in reparations, reimbursement for the pilfered home, Imani's uncompensated toil, emotional distress, and Blaze harm. Their villa, vehicles, and enterprise holdings were sold off to settle their debt. We utilized the funds to reconstruct anew. The fresh abode featured larger panes, a contemporary kitchen, and an ample primary suite where I'd relocated my possessions from Singapore because I wasn't departing. Mom, Imani had said when I proclaimed my permanent move to Atlanta, are you certain? You labored so diligently in Singapore. My existence ain't in Singapore, I'd responded. My existence is wherever my kin is. The finest enhancement was Danika's backyard play area with swings, slide, and sandpit. Every dusk, I'd propel her on the swings while Imani nurtured her blossom patch. Higher, Grandma, Danika would yelp, her glee resounding across the block. At 5 years old, Danika had matured into a self-assured, gleeful child who knew she was cherished and guarded. She called me Grandma instinctively and demanded I recite the courageous little squirrel tale nightly. Imani had flourished too. The haunted expression vanished, replaced by the vitality of the resilient woman I'd nurtured. She'd begun evening courses pursuing a social services credential. "I want to aid other women who've endured what I did," she confided. "Demonstrate there's always promise." This dusk, as I propelled Danika on her swing, Imani emerged bearing 3 tumblers of iced tea. She perched on the veranda steps, observing us with a luminous smile. "Grandma," Danika said, easing her swing to regard me earnestly, "will you dwell with us forever and ever?" I halted the swing and knelt to her plane, peering into those hazel eyes so akin to her mother's. "Forever and ever, darling. Wild stallions couldn't haul me away." "Mom," Imani summoned from the veranda, voice laden with sentiment. "Thank you for rescuing us. Thank you for never surrendering." As the sun dipped over Atlanta and Danika dashed to pursue lightning bugs, I comprehended this instant, this flawless, mundane evening with my kin, was worth more than all my achievements in Singapore. Reflecting on this odyssey, I grasped how near I'd come to forfeiting all that genuinely counted. For a decade, I pursued accomplishment in Singapore while my daughter agonized quietly. Don't replicate my error. Don't permit professional aspirations to obscure your kin's anguish. This authentic tale instructed me that the divine has a manner of drawing us home when we're essential. I trust the Lord directed me back to Atlanta at precisely the apt juncture, just as He steers us all through our bleakest periods. Sometimes what appears as happenstance is truly celestial mediation. The Clinton family presumed they could exploit a defenseless woman sans repercussions, but they overlooked that the divine observes all, and equity invariably prevails. Imani's fortitude amid those 3 dreadful years revealed to me that belief can uphold us through inconceivable adversity. These grandma tales aren't solely about my ordeal. They're about the potency of kin ties that can never be genuinely severed. When I beheld Danika concealing behind her mother, fearful of the grandmother she scarcely knew, I apprehended the toll of my absence. But affection has a way of mending even the profoundest scars. If you're laboring distant from home, recollect that no sum of wealth can substitute the instants you forfeit with your offspring and grandkids. Triumph signifies not if your kin suffers while you're absent. This authentic tale could have concluded quite differently had I arrived mere weeks later. The utmost boon wasn't the judicial triumph or the new abode. It was Danika addressing me as Grandma, with sincere affection in her tone. These grandma tales remind us that presence is the most invaluable present we can bestow our kin. That's why I disseminate these grandma tales, to motivate other grandmothers to prioritize what truly signifies. Don't await a calamity to draw you home. Don't presume your dear ones are fine merely because they don't grumble. And never undervalue the might of a parent's love to shift peaks when their child requires them. This authentic tale altered all our lives eternally. Imani discovered her resilience. Danika learned she was shielded. And I unearthed that home isn't a locale. It's the folks who adore you without condition. If this tale moved your spirit, please recount your own kin experiences in the comments below. Don't omit to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting authentic tales that honor the indestructible bonds of kin affection. Your tale might be precisely what another needs to hear.